Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. What a terrific morning to be in Florence. Lisa and team picked the right week. It's such a gorgeous day out there. I'm impressed that you guys showed up. So thanks for being with us. I'm Dirk Forrester, the President and CEO of IETA, and we are thrilled to be celebrating our 25th anniversary with you all today. Stick around till the end of the day. We're going to have some fun at a cocktail reception / event to celebrate IETA's 25 years. Much of that 25 years has been focused on the EU ETS as sort of the flagship program that is driving emissions down in heaviest emitting sources and sectors in Europe, and has turned into a model for much of the rest of the world to look at on how to achieve your carbon goals ideally faster and at lower cost by working together in a market. And that's the market that we're privileged to serve. Many of us in this room, some of you are some of the biggest emitters in Europe who have emissions challenges, and you're driving your emissions down in collaboration with others, and others of you are providing services that help make this market work. So again, we've got a lot to take stock of together this couple of days, because it's such a vibrant period of change in Europe. Obviously, we're still contending with impacts of wars, not just one, but two wars. And we're accelerating the change in our energy systems to meet Paris goals. And there's also pressure not just on those that are covered by the systems, but on those that aren't covered by systems to address emissions voluntarily and to do so in a way that has high credibility. Yesterday, IETA issued its own, we call it sort of our house view, but our member view of what we think a responsible approach to use of markets in the voluntary sector should be. I recommend that to you for consideration as a guidepost, really, on how you and your colleagues in the voluntary space may want to accelerate action, because the time frames on achieving Paris goals are getting tighter and tighter. This is a massive change that we need to undertake. And so we need really everyone to be pulling their weight, including those that are not covered by mandatory systems. But we're also going to have some opportunity to talk about international dimensions of this. There's this week, we tried to pick a good week for this event that wouldn't conflict with others, but it turns out there's a massive carbon market-related event in Singapore this week, and the World Bank spring meetings have also captured a lot of attention, mostly finance ministers there. So we're kind of, I guess, voices in concert with others around the globe in this cause of bringing down emissions toward the Paris goals. I'm joined today on the opening ceremony by two distinguished guests that are going to help set the stage for the rest of the discussion. We'll at the end of this first set of remarks, we'll have a short 5-minute break and move right into the opening plenary. So just tray tables up, seat backs up, and we'll get on with it. And with that, I'm going to invite Ruben Vermeeren to come up. He's the deputy head of the unit for the EU ETS policy team. It's with the European Commission, and Ruben is going to be doing a little double duty with us today, I think, on a couple of sessions. But he'll come up now and kind of give opening framing remarks, and then I'll introduce our next speaker. But Ruben, please join me up here.
Thank you very much, Dirk, for the kind introduction. Congratulations on your 25th birthday. I had no idea. The ETS is still a teenager, but I see you are older than the EU ETS. And congratulations also to you and the team for the organization of this fantastic event. I had heard about it. I didn't know it was this impressive, so it's a pleasure to be here. The title is European Climate Summit, but the focus and the agenda is very much focused on carbon markets and carbon pricing. And that is, of course, a focus that we welcome very much as European Commission. As you probably are aware, we are big believers in carbon pricing, in carbon markets. We are fans of the instrument because if you design it well, it can really bring down emissions in a guaranteed and reliable way, cost effectively, so at the lowest cost to society, and it raises revenues, and substantial ones. And those you can reinvest and help the transition become a reality for citizens and businesses. So that makes it a very powerful combination, the instrument of carbon pricing. That is the theory, but we also have the practical facts to back that up. The EU emissions trading system exists since 2005, and since it's April, and we have fresh figures on verified emissions. Let me give you just two of those figures. 15.5% emission reductions in 1 year, in 2023, compared to 2022, were achieved, mostly thanks to the power sector. And that means that we are now 47% below the emissions of the start of the system in 2005. So minus 47, we have to go to minus 62 by 2030, and then we will be on our way to climate neutrality. Second figure, record revenues. 43.6 billion revenues were raised, euros, last year alone. 39 billion of those 43 go to the member states. And the good news is that as of last year, the member states need to reinvest all this money in climate purposes, in energy purposes, and in social purposes that we have listed in the ETS legislation. And as Commission, we will keep a very close eye on the expenditure of that money because it's crucial, again, to make the transition. So we have record revenues, we have record emission reductions, but carbon markets are not limited to Europe alone, and not limited to the EU ETS alone. In fact, I think there is a global momentum for carbon pricing going on. Just last week we saw from ICAP a report on the status of ETSs worldwide, that there are now 18 such systems in place, and a further 22 under development or under consideration. This may be triggered in part by the CBAM. It may in part be triggered by the need for countries to look for reliable instruments. And this is very good news for us in Europe, for the climate, but also strategically. Because in Europe we are now responsible only for 7% of global emissions, and this percentage will decline rapidly given the ambitious goals that we have for 2030 and that we have proposed for 2040. So we want to capitalize on this momentum, especially in the context of the 2040 work that is now starting. We launched the discussion in February of this year. Ambitious European target means that we need to do much more to make sure that the other 93% also moves in the right direction. Again, important for our businesses and for the climate. And we have a lot to share in terms of expertise, in terms of experience, in terms of mistakes that we have made and that others don't need to repeat. And for that reason, the Commission is launching a task force on international carbon market outreach. This is being set up as we speak. It was announced in February, and there will be 10 people working in that task force, which is quite a big number for the Commission. They do outreach on compliance markets. They will help third countries set up their systems when they wish to have such assistance, but they are not limited to compliance markets. Voluntary carbon market and the need to have high integrity there is also part of their mission statement, and the objective to contribute to an ambitious Article 6 standard as well. I see those are also, looking at the agenda today, important topics for the AITA membership. So I'm looking forward to some very interesting discussions today, thought-provoking sessions, and I wish you all a very good session. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ruben. And you sort of scratched the surface of several topics there that I know is your full-time day job, but also things that market participants are deeply interested in and that we're going to enjoy having deep dives into over the course of the discussion today. Next, I'm going to invite up Simone Borghese, who is, I should say Dr. Simone Borghese, but our esteemed colleague from the Florence School of Regulation here, also has a post at the University of Siena, so you can tell he's got really tough assignments tough places to work on environmental economics, right? But he also heads up the European Association of Environmental Economists. And Simone is someone that I've gotten to know over the years as I've been in this post that brings a lot of insightful vision, really, from the academic community that works in and around the emissions trading universe. So Simone, please come up and we would like to welcome you to the stage.
Thank you, Dirk, for the nice words. I would have a very short presentation. I don't know if it can be launched. There it is, but I would need it. Here it is. I won't touch the black button, I was otherwise we explode. Okay, so thank you for having me here today. Real pleasure. I was asked to to set the scene for today's discussion on climate policy in general and the emission trading system in particular. And I will start with a very simple statement. Climate action is urgent. No surprise, I guess. But when I started studying environmental economics long ago, back in the 90s, I was taught that sustainable development is about preserving the needs of future generations. At that time, I thought, okay, I'm born people in a far distant future. I was wrong. The distant future has come. The distant future is now. I think we are the future generation. We are the ones suffering for the first time the consequence of climate change, no matter whether we're talking about young or less young people. So let's say the future is now. But I don't think we should panic. I don't think eco-anxiety helps. I think we should act in an orderly, efficient, equitable way. And simply, we cannot afford to pay the costs of inaction any longer. We were warned about this by the Stern Review already in 2006, but not much action has occurred since then. So how can we accelerate that action? In my view, carbon pricing is one of the most powerful tools we have at disposal to act now. You know, I've been studying carbon pricing for many years, and in particular the EU ETS for many years. And I've seen the EU ETS growing as an adult system. Last year it turned 18, and now it's 19. It's basically 1/3 of my life that has been accompanied by the EU ETS. And it keeps growing and changing, now with new sectors, new gases, and also new markets like the VCM. So, but what are the key features that a successful ETS should have? In my view, well, given the time constraint, I will focus only on 4. But in my view, these are the 4 features. First of all, a robust price signal. We need the price signal to be not too low, not too high. If it's too low, it raises credibility issue because simply it applies a polluter does not pay principle. If it's too high, it raises social acceptability issues, as we have seen. So that is why, in my view, it would make sense to have a price that grows progressively over time, and it would make sense to have price corridors, because price corridors give certainty to the market operators, but also to the potential trading partners. I mean, other ETSs you may want to link to in the future, converging prices in the future. But there is another reason why I believe prices should be neither too high nor too low, and it's about revenues. If prices are too low, revenues will be low. But the same applies if prices get too high, because the demand of permits, of allowances will fall, and so also the revenues will fall. With a young colleague from my team, we tested what is the relationship between revenues and prices. And looking at the EU ETS data, we found what we call a sort of carbon Laffer curve. So with the revenues first going up and then down. And a maximum price that you can afford to maximize revenues, which we find to be around, in a range, let's say, between 85 and 125 euros per ton of CO2, which, by the way, is in line with Stiglitz's argument for a price by 2030 to achieve the Paris targets. Revenues leads me to the second point, a proper use of revenues. As Dirk said, as Ruben said, revenues are crucial. They should be used for environmental purposes and for distributional purposes to address the social concerns that an increasing carbon price is generating. But as I used to say, we are sitting on a golden mine, because the amount of revenues that the ETSs are expected to raise is really huge. It is expected to lead to 1,500 billion euros by 2050, topped up with 86 billion euros with the Social Climate Fund for ETS2. So basically, in my view, the ETSs generate the money we need to address social concerns. But it's not enough to use the revenues. We need to be able to communicate how we use the revenues. And this leads me to the third point, a proper communication inside Europe and outside Europe. Inside Europe, to address the social concerns that we see rising with carbon prices. Outside Europe, to have more countries on board. And in this sense, I think it would be useful to use a share of the CBAM revenues to get more countries on board. For instance, transferring part of this share conditional to their use for the adoption of clean technologies, to help their energy transition as well. Having more countries on board means enlarging the climate club. And ideally, we would like to have everybody on board so that we don't have a club anymore at the end. Finally, a successful ETS, in my view, needs a successful voluntary carbon market for the future. We know that we will need to compensate the residual emissions of the hard-to-abate sectors. This calls for a proper design of VCM, which should be, in my view, transparent, additional, permanent, in the sense able to ensure the permanency of the offsets, and also socially acceptable. So co-design with the local communities to make sure they're accepted by these communities. All these aspects, and many more, to be honest, are part of the project we currently run at the European University Institute, which is called LIFE COAS, where COAS stands for Collaborative Observatory for the Assessment of the UTS. But in reality, we like the acronym because it reminds of Ronald Coase. It's a tribute to the Nobel Prize economist who first gave key contributions in economic theory on the ETS. The project involves the active participation of the regulators of the main ETSs worldwide, from the European Commission to regulators of China, New Zealand, California, Quebec, and Switzerland. And actually, let's say, the table is enlarging because other observers are invited and interested. And our role is to provide technical backgrounds to facilitate the policy dialogue and promote capacity building. I think two elements that are of crucial importance to ensure the alignment and the convergence of the ETSs in the future. So, in a nutshell, and to conclude, I think that three elements are needed to reach the ambitious net zero targets for the future. Carbon pricing as a key, necessary, although not sufficient instrument on its own. Redistribution of the carbon revenues for the distributional concerns, and global cooperation to lower the cost of decarbonization. These are the, say, 3 musketeers that we need for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you for ending there on a point that I think is extremely important for all of our collective work together, and that's the global cooperation point. And I was also glad to see Ruben kind of ended with that point as well, about the importance of, we can't just do this inside of Europe. It does have to be a global operation. And it's not just about lowering costs, I think. It's actually about helping other countries achieve their ambitions by, driving resource there. That's something that right now the voluntary market is kind of the main engine of. But it's something that I think we need to take another look at, how compliance markets are going to embrace each other and maybe mutually recognize each other as we move forward on this journey to net zero. I also wanted to just quick reflection. You had Ronald Coase, the photo of Ronald Coase there, the professor that, as you said, sort of spearheaded a lot of the thinking in environmental economics on the theories that undergird climate change. But I bet you didn't know this. The predecessor to IETA was a dialogue series that UNCTAD ran. And it started in about 96 or 97, right around the time of the Kyoto Protocol. And I was in government then in the Clinton administration, so I was dispatched to go to this opening meeting in Chicago of this policy dialogue run by Frank Joshua. And Ronald Coase came to it. It was only 60 people, and he came to that opening thing and kind of gave remarks like you did. So you're sort of in the same tradition as Ronald Coase. I just wanted you to know that. And so that's the only. That was the first time I ever met a Nobel laureate, and everybody hung on every word that he said, and it was truly impressive. Anyway, so we come from a noble heritage. With that, I'm going to end the opening ceremony and invite Eva Kriskava from Bloomberg to come up and for her panel to come up, and we'll move right into the next session. Thank you.